Hey guys, welcome to my channel. It's Whitney with That Whitney Life. In this video, I have 3 trash to treasure DIYs for you that are kind of more like scrap to treasure, but you know what I mean. So without further ado, let's jump into it. DIY number 1. This is just an old fence plank that my landlord gave us to use as kindling for fires. And I decided I wanted to cut it down and use it for a DIY. So I cut it down to about 11 to 12 inches. And I sanded it down really well. This was old, so it had some dirt on it that I wanted to get off. And then I cut it with my miter saw, so it had some splintering as well. If you don't have an electric miter saw, you can always get a miter box from Home Depot. I don't know if the fence plank will fit in it, but that's an option. So I'm just giving this a coat of, you know, my favorite paint, Rust-Oleum chalk paint, linen white. And I'm going to go ahead and let that dry. And while that is drying, I'm going to take 4 of these little pieces. This is from Dollar Tree, like a wedding sign. It has like ceremony and something on reception, something like that. And I just ripped them off, and this was the stand to it. So I'm going to glue 2 of these together. I'm just using a little bit of wood glue and some hot glue, just gluing 2 together. And I'm going to clamp that down and then let it dry for a couple hours. I didn't let it completely cure. I just really didn't need to for this next step. But in the long run, yes, it did dry overnight. So it had some gaps and cracks in it, and I wanted it to be seamless. So I took some Dollar Tree lightweight spackling and just really packed it in there. I wasn't worried about how messy this looked because this stuff sands off really easily. So I wouldn't worry about that. I mean, you can take a damp towel to it and wipe off the excess if you want. But like I said, I didn't really care. I just wanted to pack this in there. I put the clamps back on and let that cure overnight. And while those were drying, I decided that I wanted to sand the devil out of this tray. This was quite messy. It did have a lot of dust, obviously. So I just kind of kept sanding and then wiping it off and sanding and wiping it off. You can do this with an electric sander. I do have one of those. I think I'm out of sandpaper for it though. Regardless, it's been kind of cold in Oregon and rainy, and I just really didn't want to go to the garage and do it. So I chose a sand sponge from the Dollar Tree. It worked just fine. After I got it where I wanted it, I'm just taking a damp towel and wiping all of the dust off, and then I went ahead and wet distressed the sides of it. I kind of forgot to sand the sides of it. I was so focused on the top of it, but this worked out totally fine. Wet distressing is one of my favorite ways to do things. And this is what you should have so far. I'm digging the herringbone pattern that it kind of came out in it. Now that those little pieces are dry, I'm going to go ahead and sand off the excess lightweight spackling. And then I'm also going to give them just the sides of it, really, a coat of paint just to conceal everything. And this is totally optional. If it doesn't bother you, then just leave it alone, but it was kind of bothering me. So I wanted to paint over the crack because when I sanded it, it kind of came out. Like, it sounds so bad. The crack came out. Anyways, back to being an adult. So painted the sides of it, and then once they were dry, I gave it a sand because on mainly the tops of it and the kind of the corners, the edges, I wanted to have it flow with the tray, so I needed it to be distressed, and this was super easy to do. It came off really easily. So now I'm going to take some wood glue and a hot glue combo and glue these handles on. Make sure you are wiping away any excess glue. And I did the same thing to the other side, obviously. So I tried to line it up the best I could. And then I took a clamp and marked where I needed it to be because I knew I was going to immediately forget as soon as I started putting the glue on. I was like, oh, crap, of course they're not, symmetrical. But this is how it turned out. I absolutely love this tray. I think this is one of my favorite wood pieces, and it was so easy. It's amazing how just like a coat of paint and a little bit of elbow grease can really transform something. I love it. Now this next one, I don't even know if I could call it a DIY. It's so easy. So these are jars that I picked up on the side of the road. Poor things were abandoned and I rescued them. So I cleaned them up with a little bit of alcohol and I just gave them a coat of gold paint, and I used Rust-Oleum Metallic in pure gold, I think the color was. It's just this gorgeous kind of, it's not super metallic. It doesn't have a lot of reflection. As you can see, I love this. It's the perfect gold for me because I don't want a lot of reflection. I don't want it to just shine like crazy. I want it to be kind of muted. So it's the perfect color for me. I think this really elevated these jars and made them perfect for my home. So this next one, more of that fence plank. I cut it down, I think it was 12 inches on the taller ones and about 3 to 4 inches on the smaller ones. Sanded them down, wiped them down, and now I'm going to go ahead and glue them together, and these are going to be sort of like shelf sconces, if you know what I mean. Anyway, so I used some wood glue and I smeared that on, and then a hot glue combo as well, and made sure that they were lined up as much as possible. And then I also took a clamp and clamped them together. This worked out really well, actually. It just kind of seems like it's unnecessary, but it worked out really well. Now I'm going to give both of them a coat of that white linen chalk paint. I'm not doing the most amazing job because, again, I'm going to sand the devil out of this one. So I didn't want to do all that work and then just have it sanded off. So I decided that it was looking a little plain. So I cut down these 2 little pieces of fence plank to 1.5 inches. One of them did just pretty much break. I think there was a knot there, but once I had it glued together, you couldn't even tell. So I'm just going to go ahead and give them a quick coat of white paint. I'm not doing the most amazing job because, again, I'm just going to sand it off. So here it comes. The devil's being sanded out of this thing. I am really going to town on it, making sure I'm sanding every part of it so it flows really well. It's all cohesive. And I didn't do it as intensely as I did the tray, but I did go for it, pretty heavily. So now that that is all done, I'm going to glue the little pieces on. I did sand them down off camera. I figured you saw enough sanding in this video. I figured you didn't need to see any more. Since these little pieces aren't going to bear any weight, I figured that wood glue is probably unnecessary, so I just did a boatload of hot glue. They're both the Gorilla Glue brand, so I figured it was going to be fine. So these are sawtooth hangers. I know it's just way overkill. They're really big. They're for heavy hanging, so this is just what I had. Glued them on, and here's the finished product. I absolutely love these. I put those other 2 jars that I had spray painted with some boxwood on them and hung them up in my living room. And I just think they're beautiful. They're perfect. I'm kind of into that shabby chic sort of decor right now. I'm moving a little bit away from the farmhouse, going more to the shabby chic, and I think these are beautiful. I absolutely adore them. And this was pretty much free to me. Like, that's amazing. It was literally pennies. So it just goes to show that you can make beautiful things out of anything. Well, that is everything I have for you in this video. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Let me know if you're going to recreate any of these. My Instagram handle's in the description box. Make sure you follow me there. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. God bless.